Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing this evening? I am Dr. Paula Obi, and I am so glad that you have joined us tonight. You have joined the Power of Transformation broadcast. We are January the 15th, 2025. It's a Wednesday. It's kind of chilly, and we're in my region, my neck of the woods, in Eastern Standard Time. We're so glad you're here. And we have another great show planned for you tonight, an amazing discussion. We're going to continue our series, and we're not sure how long it's going to take, but we're going to continue our series with my best friend, Noel Ramos, and we're going to have our financial discussions. Now, before we bring her in, we want to tell our friends and our family, we want to remind them that we are here. So we want to take our phones, we want to tag them, we want to text them, and if you have a moment, give them a call and share the show because we want to get 2025 financial plan started off in the right direction. And we have an amazing guru to help us do that. So, of course, I'm going to do my part in, texting and my folks, and we'll be right back. See you soon. Well, welcome back. Well, we're going to have some more discussion about finances. And we're going to welcome in my friend, Noel Ramos. Come on
Hey.
in. Hey, Noel.
Hey.
I told you Noel works kind of hard because normally she's in the background. She's working a little harder than me. So she's background. Yeah. She's just a multitasker, a woman with a lot of talent. But welcome again, Noel. We received some really good comments from our previous show. I want you to know that. The replay, the views were really good. And I guess because we had some, weather here, a little East Coast weather. So folks were in. So they decided to scroll. And guess what? They tuned into us.
Ooh, I love it.
Don't you love it?
I love it.
I love it too. And I really think we're onto something. And I say we because you and I definitely a team. I'm learning from you. You did a great job. And it kind of had me thinking about some things. And I said to you that I want to kind of reiterate, if you don't mind.
Okay.
That just kind of touched my heart and I want to share. When we share our personal stories, I think people really understand the struggle and how you can move from point A to point B. And maybe that's why we're here. That's our calling. So we'll continue this series as long as needed, but we definitely want to have a great conversation about financial planning. How does that sound to you?
Oh, it sounds amazing to me. Too many times we see in our culture or in just in life in general where we have our missteps. People are taking the wrong steps, and so easy to beat yourself up about it and keep dwelling on it instead of taking the steps that you need to move forward and get past it. So I think it's a good topic to continue to discuss.
And I think you're a great person for me to discuss it with, because I think you understand, by looking at me like, oh my God, that reflection. But the very first thing we talked about was income and the importance of income. We said we were going to find a friendly word, another word for word budgets, but I don't want to talk about that right now. I want to talk about income because when I was watching the replay, and I do watch the shows, I said to myself, you know what, Paula? Without the income being steady, and you said it, being honest, and that's what you warned us about, having a truthful conversation, income needed to be steady. Then it will actually spill over to the other areas that you're trying to help us with. And this is our foundation. Well, I have thought, and I want to share it with everyone. This is probably what I call the beginning of my downfall and greatest lesson learned from my financial awareness and acuity. I actually resigned from a job before I had a job. Now, what does that do for the whole budgeting process?
I think you just need to throw it out the window. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to budget when you have no income coming in. That's when your budget's really tight.
And let me tell you something, when we're talking to people, that is one place where they'll have the biggest issue.
Right.
And that is trying to maintain a steady income. I I encountered what I call one of my emotional triggers, Noel. Someone upset me on my job.
Mm.
And instead of being the grown up that I was supposed to be, emotionally, I returned to that teenager. And that's just not like me, right? I turned in my resignation. Everybody tried to tell me that it was not a good idea.
That's rough when you're in your emotions like that, Paula, and you just feel you know what you're doing is the right thing to do, and you just you know in your mind and your heart of hearts that it's what you need to do. But yeah, that's a tough call there.
It is a tough call. And that's where I want to sit for just a second. I want it to resonate with a lot of folks who are going, well, I can get a job. Yes. But my advice to you, even as an HR person, go ahead and secure that job. Go ahead and secure that income. I had a little bit of savings, but that savings was not meant to be used at that moment.
Mm-hmm.
The issue is not the savings. The issue is the fact that I had a big role in my life. I needed to take care of myself. I had some obligations. So leaving that job and turning in my resignations before procuring another job was not a good idea for me. I am in an emotional place where now I'm making other emotional decisions that aren't good for me.
Mm.
Right. So I'm going to tell this last part and then we're going to move on. So now I have decided that in the middle of this don't have a job, I'm going to start a new relationship. Now, for some people, it might have worked, but for me, it did not. I'm like, I needed to really focus, y'all, on getting my income back because starting the new relationship was just a deflection.
Mm-hmm.
Because all of the promises that were made were not fulfilled. The responsibility for taking care of everything in my realm of authority was mine. And some of you are going to, comment and say, oh, people can come and help you. Absolutely. But the first thing I needed to do was say, okay, let me commit myself to going to get another job. So I'm also going to say something else and then we're going to let it go. But I know that the people that are around me, we are sometimes in a difficult place and then we make another very hard decision. Would you agree with that?
I couldn't agree 100%. Yeah, 100%. I agree. You think at the time, and once again, it's not to beat yourself up because you're in
No, no.
that moment, and at that time,
Mhm.
you probably feel it's the best solution, and maybe it is, but maybe it isn't. And maybe, Paula, you should have listened to all your friends who said, don't quit that job. But at that time, you thought it was your solution. And what me and my girlfriends always say, did you learn from it? Is that a lesson you learned? Yes, ma'am. Then let's keep
Yes.
it moving. And that's a lesson we learned.
I refer to that time because it was a stepping stone for the future. So I'm in this emotional place where I'm making all of these emotional decisions. And that's my point. So now I've got the energy going into more than one direction. I can't focus on my income. So I would suggest that you know your triggers.
Oh, yeah.
Know your triggers and then focus because that income is really important for you to cover everything else that you need to cover. And I'm not putting anyone down, but there are some people who sound really good vocally about, oh yes, we can do this. I can help you do that. And I can join in with you on this. And then it doesn't quite pan out the way you want it to. And you're the one, as God told me, this was your responsibility. I've learned from it. I've shared it. And I think it's going to help folks who are listening, Noel, to take a breath and say, this is priority. Let's get this income stabilized.
Right. And Paula, you just triggered something that I know I went through. You said, how people are going to say, I'll be there for you. Let's do this together. Um, I had quit my job after 18 years, and I was supposed to go in on a business adventure with one of my best friends, and we were going to do it together. And I didn't quit because we were supposed to go into. I was just at that point. I'm like, it's time to go. I can't stand this. It's time to go. It's run its course. Whoo, you know. And when push came to shove, that person wasn't there for me. So
Yes.
now I'm in what am I going to do now? Because
Yeah.
I banked on that person being there for me and let's doing it together. It's like, I have no income. I have a mortgage I have to pay. I'm by myself. I don't think I had a car payment. I was smart enough to pay that one off. But I was in, I was in, oh no, what do I do now mode? And I think
Right.
this is where I found my calling, but yeah.
Absolutely. That is exactly where you found your calling. And that is exactly where I found my calling because I found more answers, learned about me, and I said, I will never be in this position again. I do honor the fact that if I do have income, and I need to move forward with something else because it's not working out. I have options, but the requirement for me is to make sure don't have a real break in that income. Of course, we have savings, and you're going to talk to us about, we're going to talk about how much savings we need. And savings are for emergencies. But
Yeah.
being hot headed and resigning, I don't consider that an emergency.
It certainly is not.
I consider that being hot headed and resigning. Well, I should have gone home, taken a nap and two Tylenol for my headache, and gone back to work the next day and said, "You're not going to shove me out
You
of my
know, though,
job."
sometimes it's just so gratifying to say, I quit. Just storm out like that teenager and throw that
Yeah,
tantrum that we want to do. And I'm out.
I turned into
Take this
emotional,
job. And you know what?
and then we still have these big grown up responsibilities, and we're
It's like,
like,
uh-oh,
"Wow!"
what did I just do?
And my aunt's calling me, going, Are you sure you were prepared for all this?" So I'm learning, I'm sharing, and I'm loving it because it is our calling. And also had an impact on other decisions that we make because we're a little desperate. And
Hmm.
everything sounds good, but it may not pan out.
Right. And that's one thing I want to focus on too, Paula, is, we talked about budgeting last week. And, you mentioned it, you just mentioned now having that savings. And, you need to have that emergency funds. And you need at least to have like $1,000 just for emergency fund, just to start off with.
Okay.
And then once you get like all your debt paid and you get a good amount of that broken down, you need to start thinking about a 3 to 6 months of savings to have at
Yeah.
all times, to have with you, not in an investment, not anything else, but 3 to 6 months. Because if something was to happen to you, like you blew a fuse, or you get laid off, which I've seen, people get laid off, you have 3 to 6 months to cover your expenses, so that way you're not in a rush to just grab the first thing that comes to you, or settle, or having to do with something you just wanted nothing to do with. So it's important to have that, start putting that in your budget. When we
Yes.
talked about telling your money what to do, if you have money left over at the end of your budget and you don't have your savings set up right, start telling your money, okay, $20 here, you're going to go into my savings, and this is where you're going. This is
I
where I'm going
love
to
it.
put you.
I love it. I love it. And this is real talk that's so important. Now, like I said, sometimes people will try to give you advice and you won't take it. Learn from
Oh,
that lesson, like you said, and say, okay, I need to think about this a little bit better. And the emotional decisions that you make, what I would suggest at that time is to focus on trying to regain your composure because I had a mortgage. Try to regain your composure and focus on that part first.
yeah,
And then your expenses, as you said before, and savings. If someone wants to come in your life with this big love story, it may be, maybe you want to ease into that. That's your decision. It was not my decision. I just, zoomed right on into it. Now I have all of these things to think about, and I'm worn out, and I'm not making good decisions. And all of that really impacts your bottom line. It impacts your income.
I agree.
So then the liabilities, you talked about that. Let's be truthful about what's going out. And sometimes people are not as truthful. You did say that. I just want to recap. Not being truthful about what you have to, what you're have to pay for, and how you're spending money. You're just hurting yourself.
Right. And being truthful is going back and looking at those bank statements. It's so easy
Yes.
to say, oh, yeah, here's my phone, here's my utilities, here's my,
Yeah.
electrics, and just, oh, yeah, 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 we're good. But I need to go back and I need to look at what I actually spent my money on, what I swiped my card, what I PayPal or what I ordered offline off Amazon.
Yes.
I mean, I'm on a big Temu and Sheen, kick
Yeah.
right
Me
now where I'm
too.
like,
Me
oh,
too.
gotta stop.
I'm like,
So you need to do, it's going to take work. And that's what a lot of people don't want to do is like, it's going to take work. You have to go back and do the work and you have to go back and look at those bank statements and let's see truly, truly where your money is going. How much am I spending for lunch 5 days a week when I'm at work? Because prices aren't going down unless you're getting, I don't even think, is there a dollar menu anymore?
I
So
know.
you're spending $10 to $15 probably a day at
Right.
lunch. How much is that? How much are you spending in the week? How much are you spending in the month? Add that up for the year. Can I
Yes.
pack
Yes.
my lunch? Can I pack
Yes.
a lunch? So
Yes. And these, I wish I'd had a Noel at that time. I might would have listened to you. You know what I'm saying?
sometimes I'm rough. Sometimes
No,
that
no. I might would have listened to you at that time when you said, look, you need to pump your brakes, relax, calm down. We need to get you first things first. Let's get you calm. You don't need any additional issues. You don't need additional liabilities. You don't need additional expenses.
right.
Let's figure out if you are in this emotional spending tornado and get you back down to a steady state. And
You
I
know what?
say it like that.
Yeah. Any advice I would give before you decide to storm out of that job, run the numbers because guess what? Numbers don't lie. People
Yeah,
lie, but numbers
people
don't
lie.
lie, and they're
But
going to
numbers
tell you
don't
whether
lie.
you need that job another month or need to find one before you quit that one for sure.
Right. Absolutely. And I hope this conversation is going to bless somebody because that was one of my greatest lessons learned. And I placed it on the recesses of my heart and said, you will not ever do this again and you will share your story someday. So I'm really loving the fact that we are helping people. Those emotions that say storm away, storm out, those let them just play out and just go home and run the numbers. And if you a lot of people will say, well, how many jobs have you had in the last 5 years?
Me personally,
No,
one.
I mean, if you
I
think
was going to
about
say I'm pretty loyal to jobs.
me too, but if you've got somebody who maybe changes jobs every year,
Right.
then it might have an impact on the
You know who you
steadiness
are.
of
You
their.
got that family member every other time you're calling them. Where you working at now?
Yeah,
Yeah, I got him in
you're
my
like,
family.
oh, I don't work there anymore. So when you're having a conversation with them about steady income, their paychecks vary. And
Yes.
so they have to be truthful about the fact that, I just don't stay at one job long. So you might want to discuss with them, you might want to stay there longer than, you can't get in an argument with everybody every day and then leave.
No.
This is
My
just,
younger brother, he's quit because I don't know if anybody else, they disrespected me.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And yeah. And so those kind of conversations, I'm going to take a moment to share with clients and say, let's talk about this from a little bit more of a grown up perspective, because now you're an adult. We want you to do things a little differently and you have to practice that. Also, in one institution, you only earn 1 day of sick leave, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you've been there 6 months and you've already taken 10 days, then your checks are going to be a little short.
Absolutely.
So those are the things, common knowledge things that people go, oh, I'll make it up. Yeah, you will, but let's kind of think about the plan. And that's where we are at the beginning of the show, saying, let's think about the plan, because we want to get to the point where we're protecting what God has given us. We're protecting it and we're able to meet our goals. We're able to cover our expenses with the
Mm-hmm.
income. And we need that protection, right?
Right, I agreed. And in the long run, we need to make sure we're respecting ourselves. And are we doing a disservice to ourselves when we're constantly jumping from job to job or not correctly doing a budget? Not making sure our lives are in order. I think it's just a huge disservice, and just respecting yourself when you do stuff like that.
So as we're talking to folks and we give them this tidbit, it's not that we're just giving them conversation about what we've read. I'm also talking to you from the back of my mind what I've experienced, because I was a person that would stay on the job, a long time. I don't know who that person was, but I know that that was a spiral that taught me a lot of things about losses because of not protecting what God had given me and protecting my goals. I had goals and dreams, not to be, not working.
Right.
So I just wanted to just really talk about that solid income have a solid income conversation. I know there are a lot of nuances out there. I know people have different types of circumstances, but you can't pay something that you don't have money for,
Right.
right?
Right. And one other thing I'd like to really bring up too, where I've seen folks make the mistake of, is dipping into the retirement account.
Yeah, well, that
That is such a sore subject. And I've done it too. I am guilty. And I try to, because I've done it, I've been there. And so dipping in your retirement is not a savings account. I've had to have this discussion with both myself
yeah, with me.
and with clients. You got to be careful with that, because if you're before the age 59 and a half, retirement age, you're paying penalties. A lot of that money is going for penalties. You still got to pay taxes on it. So by the time you're done, you're not even getting that much back. And think about how long you had to work for
Yes.
that retirement.
Yes, yes. And those are the conversations we need to constantly have with folks because they're like, oh well, like me, oh well, I have this, or I can do this. And that is an instant solution, but it's not the best solution.
Right.
And
It's
if we
instant gratification,
it's instant
unfortunately.
gratification. So let's sit back for a minute. Let's figure out another plan to cover the situation that you're in so that you aren't causing more problems for you down the road. And
Exactly.
that's what I expect financial counseling to be, really focused on the entire picture of what you just said. That's great.
Right. And
That's,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, I'm loving this conversation.
I say in the future, in one of our next series, we're going to talk about how your retirement works. So I'm going to plug us in, because you need to keep watching, because it's going to be, 3-part series. But in one of our next episodes, we're going to talk about how your retirement, how it builds up, how that compounding interest works. And so I've seen stories, horror stories, where folks have worked for 30 years of their life. Mind you, they've been building their retirement account up for 30 years. 30 years you've been working.
30 years of working.
And in less than 2 years took all their money out of retirement, because they just thought they were going to start a new business and it was going to work out great. And I begged and I pleaded,
Wow. Yeah.
please. So can you imagine working for 30 years just to spend all your money within 2 years? Mind you, once again, under the age of retirement. So half of that went to taxes and
I was going to
penalties.
say, so Uncle Sam was like, cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching.
Thank you. Yep.
Yeah,
Come
thank
again.
you.
Start
Appreciate
all
it.
over.
Yes, because because those are the rules, those are the laws, that's what they can do. And those are the conversations that we need to have to make me a better steward of the money that I have been given. Now, 30 years is a long time
It is.
to work and not have the dream that you desire. So great conversation. She said 3-part series. We can go as long as we need to, because the feedback that I've been getting, people have a hard time with this conversation. And once we bring it home and make it personal, everybody will understand. If I can move forward, they can move forward as well.
Yeah, I agree.
I love it. All right. So after we, grow up a little bit with not leaving our jobs before we have another one and staying on them and coming to work every day, got a headache, go to work, have a headache, can't have a headache every day because that's going to, and stay out of work because that's going to impact your income. You have to have this conversation with yourself about how you want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have responsibilities, you're going to have to take responsibility for them. That's just my take. If you depend on someone else, i.e., I'll call this person that can help me, i.e., that could be a dead end for you, and you don't want to not depend on you. You want to be
Right.
the one. Find the job. go to
Find
work.
two jobs if you need to find
Find
two
two
jobs.
jobs if
And
you
that side hustle.
yeah, side hustle. That's why when I said earlier, I really didn't have time for a relationship. I need to have been working two jobs. You
Right.
know, because even sometimes, and people don't like to hear this, the relationship can become a liability.
Right.
You want to eat out all the time and you want to do all these wonderful things and spend all this time. Honey, you need to be working and getting back on your feet. Take it slowly. There's a plan. Get out of that desperate place and let's do some wonderful things so that you aren't hurting and you don't have to go through what I went through in the end.
Agreed.
Uh-huh.
And one of the huge things I always tell married women who stay at home, who are taking care of the kids, who don't have their own retirement accounts. Well, I don't work.
Yes.
I need to teach you, because it doesn't matter if you work or not. If you are a stay-at-home mom, first of all, kudos to you, because that's a lot of work. And so as long as there's some earned income coming into that household, you need to open up a retirement account. Your husband or your partner or whoever needs to help you fund your retirement account if you're staying home with those kids and taking care of them,
Mm-hmm.
because you need to have your own separate account. One, it's a good thing to have whenever you get older. So now you have more money. You're putting more money aside to start helping it grow tax deferred, helping it grow tax free, because all that money in your retirement account, it grows and it grows and it grows, because we're going to talk about compounding interest, and we're going to talk about how it grows tax free. So not only hopefully the other person is putting money into the retirement, whether it's at a job or outside,
Mm-hmm.
company, now you need to be putting one in as well. And that's all you need to do is, have one outside for yourself, because it's important. And I was, I don't hope for anything to go wrong, but what if? That's what I'm here for. I need to show you the what ifs. What happens if that marriage, that relationship, that partnership doesn't last? You have nothing now.
Yeah.
You spent all of your time taking care of everybody else except for yourself. And now you're not ready for retirement, and you got to start from whatever age, whether it be your late 30s, 40s. Now you're starting something you should have started a long time ago, when you
Absolutely.
could have started with what you had now. And any husband in the world, if he is a loving husband, he will not say no. And once again, that's something you need to work on your budgets, make sure you have that room, or you need to find that money to start
Fine.
putting into your
Fine.
retirement, because
Those
that's
are
important.
yes, because those are the priorities. You talked about that. I've gone back and listened to the other. You were so wonderful with talking about focusing on those priorities. There's some things that you really need to take time to not gloss over, but focus on. That's definitely one of them. You may not be, if you work at home, you're still working.
Right.
Yeah. So you can also go the extra step and be prepared and have that account. There's nothing wrong with that. I
Right.
think that's good stewardship. I think that's great planning. And I believe that separates us from the old self of not caring about ourselves to the new world or the new way of caring more about ourselves. I love
Right.
this conversation because it's still not easy for people to discuss when it comes to budgeting. I wanted to put it out there because many of the triggers and all these things that really keep us from getting there, those things have to be managed.
Right.
They really have to be managed. So thank you for sharing in that conversation. Expenses, you've talked about it. Expenses over time, they're going to be there. Be honest about them. You're tracking them. I used to always use my debit card for everything,
Mm-hmm.
because if I use my debit card for everything, then I could track all my spending. That was my way of tracking my spending. I don't know if that's the best way for folks, but it showed me. When I downloaded, I could download the statement and CSV and do my thing in Excel, and then I would be surprised at how often I was just swiping away.
So you just said it yourself there. You thought it was your best way to track your expenses. Yeah, it is. It's the best way to track it after the fact.
After the fact, but not
So
before.
another thing you could do is, and it's old school, but have that cash. Have
Yes.
that cash you need in hand. So
Mhm.
let's say, grocery shopping, you're going to spend X amount of money because you've budgeted for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you might come and, once that cash is there, okay, well, I don't need this bag of chips, or I don't need this, this soda. We all
Mhm.
want it, but is it a need? You need to make sure you're covering what you need. And once that cash is gone, you're done.
Yeah. And I like that approach because that's really the best approach. I'm going to spend this amount of money cash because the swiping will surprise you.
Hmm.
The swiping will surprise you. So yes, I'm all over that technique of having cash to be able to pay for
I
things.
mean, cash for gas too. Think about it. I go into a gas. I'm thirsty. Oh well, I go in that gas station. How much are those 20-ounce drinks?
Yeah.
$3, $4 for. Make sure if
Yeah.
pack a drink, keep a
Yeah.
water. I mean, we see all
Yeah.
those big old things now. Everywhere women carry those big old. Make sure you fill it up before you leave. This is the small things that they start adding up over a while, and you just have to have that discipline. And that's the hardest part, is just having that
It
discipline.
is. It is. And the good news is we're not talking about it in a very negative way. We're talking about it in a positive way because a lot of people will say, well, what's the difference between that person making it and they have the same job, they have the same, but they don't look as tired as I am. They're not as exhausted as I am. They're not complaining as much about money. And maybe it's because they've learned to manage their money very well.
Right.
And if that's the case, as that is the case, all of these suggestions and tidbits, they're going to increase your value in life. They're going to increase your happiness. So thank you for sharing that. We'll be sharing all along, and because I think it's important. So you've protected that income, you've talked about that steady income. Now you have a way of tracking your expenses. How do we have further protection, Noel?
Well, it's another thing no one ever really wants to talk about. It's an ugly word. And so I'll just bring that up.
Okay.
When we're younger, loss of income, it can be devastating, right? If
Mm-hmm.
something was to happen to us, when we're younger, we could have young children. Our
Mm-hmm.
debt, most likely, it's going to be, it may or may not, but most likely it's going to be a little bit higher, right? Our
Mm-hmm.
home mortgage, it's going to be higher and up there, right? And so you
Mm-hmm.
may not necessarily have all the assets that you may whenever you're older, to make sure you can cover all this if something was to happen. So when we're younger, we want to make sure we have enough to protect us if something was to happen to us. And so when we get into retirement, it's a little bit different. Hopefully, hopefully in retirement, we got our act together, after you sat down with one of us, because this is what our end goal is, to make sure that you can retire with dignity. Make sure you retire comfortably. Make sure, we can get you where we need to get you, where you can leave a legacy for your children's children, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, when you're at retirement age, your children are grown, right? Your debts hopefully should be lower. Hopefully, you've paid off your mortgage. If not, you're on the verge of paying off your mortgage, right? Isn't that a wonderful thing? Because a lot
Yeah.
of times, I don't know about you, but in my culture, that's something that's profound. What? I'm not going to have a mortgage for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. This
Yeah.
is a mindset shift that we need to start getting people to start thinking of. We need to shift your mind thinking, and that mortgage can be paid off
Oh, absolutely.
once we show you, how to make sure you get your budget done under control and start to pay everything off as you need to, which I think we need to do a series on debt and snowball and how to get that paid off quicker.
We're gonna do it all.
But one of the things people hate to talk about is life insurance, and it's a big, huge, let's not talk about it. It's, either it's going to bring on bad juju, or it's a scam, or, they don't pay you back your money. What is that saying, Paula? It's better to have it when you don't need it
Yeah.
than to need it when, what was it? Than to not have it when you need it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think about, look, I'll think about it, need and not have and not need and not have, or something like that. But the main thing is you want it when you need it.
Exactly.
You want it to be there when you need it. And you want to plan for it.
Right.
You want to
And
plan for it.
so you want to make sure you're planning. You got to make sure the product that you get is right for you and your family. So you've heard of different kind of policies. They have term policy and they have cash policy. So we're gonna talk about those different policies. And so, God forbid something happens. You've seen it. You've heard about it. Bad car accident, someone passes away, and that family wasn't prepared. So what do they have usually? A GoFundMe, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen it.
Wouldn't you like to be able to take care of your family without having to burden them and having to have them do a GoFundMe just to pay for burial or just to pay for that mortgage? Because this is what we want to make sure we do. We want to make sure you're covering your family.
Yes.
And so, term policy is just a straight life insurance. Have it if you need it. And upon death, the beneficiary receives the face value of the policy. And compared to like the cash value policies, it's usually about 10 to 15% cheaper than what whole life policies are.
Mm-hmm.
And let's put that in perspective. If say you're paying $300 for a whole life policy, term's probably going to cost you about $30 per month versus. So you want to make sure, and whole life and term, they have a place for everything. So you want to make sure you have what you need and what's better for your family.
Right.
So term is straight. It's only carried as long as you need it, and you pay premiums as long as you need it. Okay.
Okay.
So then we have,
we see that a lot. We see the term a lot, so that makes sense, right?
So just to point out some things with the cash value, and if you don't believe me or some things that we say, you're like, no, I don't think that's right. Call your agent, call the number, call the company. So just some things about cash value you need to make sure you're aware of and you're careful about is it talks about having a savings account. So having that savings account, you get to borrow from it. Have you heard that? You get your loan, you get to borrow from it, you get a cash value loan.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Think about it though. You're paying extra on those whole life policies. You're paying extra money, and if you want, so mind you already know that term policy only costs you $30 a month, but you're paying extra so you can borrow from your money later. They're going to require you to pay that back with interest. Let that sink in. Now, if I go to the bank and tell them, hey, I need money out from my savings account, oh, sure, you can take out that money, but it's going to cost you interest. Wait a minute. I put extra money into that. That's my money.
Right.
So you got to be careful with that. And so also with the whole life policy, when you receive that beneficiary, you either receive the cash value or you receive the policy, the face amount. You're not going to receive both.
Right.
So
we're gonna have to talk about this a little bit more.
Yeah, this is just high level. So you have
so good. It's so good. I'm staring at the screen, thinking about it. This is a great.
You have to be careful. Yeah, that's what I said. You gotta read the fine print. They make it sound very good. So you got to be careful with that. You're not going to receive both the cash value because you've accumulated 50,000. You got 50,000 in cash value, and your face amount is 100,000. So when you pass away, your family you would think is going to receive 150 because you've built up that cash value. They're not. They're only going to receive that 100,000. So you got to be careful with that. In most policies.
Yeah, we're going to talk about this in more detail. Great. Great overview.
So that's what I'm saying. You have to be careful and you have to make sure you get the product that is right for you.
Yes.
So so with term, we want to teach you how to save better. So it'd be a disservice if I charge you $300 for a life insurance policy when the same policy is going to cost you $30 when we just finished talking about budgeting and making sure you get everything right. So we're going to make sure we get you covered for a lower amount. It's going to cost you less, but you're going to get that $500,000 policy. If we can catch you where, it's not, a lot of times it's when something happens, if someone thinks about covering themselves and starts thinking about life insurance. That's when it's too late. You need to catch us before, when you're still in good health, when you're still a little bit younger. We can look at something that's a $500,000 policy at maybe, $30 a month versus when you get older, now it's going to cost you, it's not even worth it at that point. You're not going to be able to afford it. Or if something happens to you where you might have cancer and you're like, well, I need it now. Well, now you're just not going to get covered.
Right. It's just so much to think about, but yeah, we're definitely going to talk about this some more. It's a topic that people do not like to discuss, but we really need to talk about it. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. And so we want to make sure, this is where we want to make sure that you don't have to rely on the GoFundMes. when these pay out, and I've seen them pay out unless, where it was a tragic accident. I think the client had gotten a life insurance policy and her husband had gotten killed, and it was maybe a year that he had this policy, and they paid out.
Okay.
They paid out. So imagine how she would have been. She had children. She had a mortgage.
Right.
And the husband had enough hindsight to say, okay, let me make sure I'm covered. He doesn't have a crystal ball. He didn't know what was going to happen to him in that year, within a year.
But he was prepared.
But he prepared for his, too many times where we don't prepare. And so now, either the wife or the husband's left at home trying to take care of the kids. What am I going to do now? Because my one single job is not going to cover the mortgage. It's not going to cover all the food, the mortgage, the insurance, the everything for the kids. It's not going to cover it all.
Right, because previously you were utilizing two incomes to make it
family income.
Two family incomes, and that budget was based on two incomes. That's a great point. It's a great topic of conversation. We're going to keep talking about that until people feel comfortable. It's not a conversation that people like to hear, but it is a conversation that will make your life better because you did listen. That's how I feel about it.
And studies have shown that women have actually gotten married sooner because they could not afford to stay on their own. So they needed help. And so what do? Let me find my next husband to help me.
To help me take care of this
scenario. To help me pay for it. And then you hear too, well, my wife's a stay-at-home. My wife's a stay-at-home mom. She doesn't need to be covered.
Right.
Well, guess who stays at home with those kids? And if something was to happen to her, what are you going to do? Then you have to find daycare. You're going to have to do something. You have to start paying extra to find help to start taking care of these kids. You're going to have to get a family member. Maybe you have to pay that family member.
Right.
Now you have to cover the cost that your wife would have done when she was at home taking care of those kids.
Right. Great, awesome conversation.
So this is, and we talk in how we figure out how much insurance you need. We want to collect all your debt. That's, once again, let's be honest. How much debt do you have? Mm-hmm. We need to figure out how much income you have coming in. Mm-hmm. We need to figure out, and that's the I. And then the M, how much is that mortgage? Do you want to have it where your wife or your husband or your spouse, your partner can pay off that mortgage? And then education. Education. Do you want your kids to have a way to get to college?
Right. What are your goals? What are your future goals?
Right. And when I'm sitting down with a husband and wife and I look at the wife, I'm like, I look at your, do you want your husband to pay off your mortgage, or do you want to just have to keep trying to struggle and hopefully make it?
Right.
The wife looks at the husband, write that check.
Because that's a great question to ask. And there is a solution that can assist them. I am envisioning that the last 15 or 20 minutes of our conversation, we're going to repeat next time, because I don't know how you feel about that, but this was so useful. I'm staring at the screen, thinking about the different scenarios, thinking about different people, and I'm thankful that you are willing to even discuss it, because I'm still learning. I'm still, in the training portion, but these are conversations that it's okay for us to have.
Right.
And it's a must. So in addition to all of the other conversations about income and liabilities and debt, etc., we need to learn protection. Do you mind if we review this again next time?
Oh yeah, most definitely. We didn't even get to the best part, where it's like frequently asked questions. What do I do about my beneficiary? Who do I choose for my beneficiary? Yeah. What happens, Yeah. So, I think to me, that's like a loving act that you can do for your family, is to make sure that they're covered and to make sure, that you have a plan in place.
Yes. And that you can talk about it, because what we're trying to do is get you to talk about having that plan in place. And then when they sit down with us, we have solutions. Mm-hmm. We've got to get them to the place where they're willing to talk about it, because it's important and it's great to have that conversation with someone you trust, and you can trust us, right?
Absolutely.
Now, Noel is a guru now. I'm learning. She's like my teacher. So thank you, Noel. And that really, I hope that makes folks think a little bit more.
Hmm.
about their finances. Is not just about what we're doing today, you know, but also what we're trying to plan, you know, for our future and for our family in the future. And when the what if scenarios, you know, are verbalized, then we should have some solution to that.
Yeah, and I want to just say, Paula, if any of the people who watch the show, if they have more questions, they can reach out to you, of course, or they can reach out to me. And, here's my email. And so if you have any questions or just want to sit down and talk and see if you're in the right direction, that's what I do. And I
Right.
do it for free. I love doing it. I'm very passionate about making sure people get what they need and making sure they change their family legacy because I want to change mine. And so I
Yeah.
want to make sure others are able to change theirs as well. So just we can have a sit down.
Yes, and I would prefer right now that they have a conversation with you, because I'm going to forward the email to you at this point. Because you right now are the guru. I'm working on it, but you have the experience that I love and that I'm just appreciative of. So when we think about the last conversation we had, the last show and today, there's a feeling in my heart of, you know what, I can be much more effective with my financial planning. So I can be much more successful with my financial planning. And that makes me feel good. How do you feel about that?
Well, 100%. Most of this, what we have talked about, once again, for some people, it's just an ugly topic, but most of it is done out of love.
Yes. And if you focus on I'm doing this out of love, true love. You know, love is patient, love is kind, but love is also you trying to protect someone and not have them in a bad place. It's hard for you to tell me that you love me and I'm constantly digging in a hole and I'm going, why you love me? But why are my expenses going up and everything's out of control? And let's love with a little bit more purpose,
Right.
a little bit more logical, and let's
Mhm.
plan well because it's time to do it. This is our time. And not leave it for someone else to figure out. That's not cool. Very good,
No.
Noel. So the topic tonight was a little deep. How do you feel? Do we need to tell people to take a breath?
Whew, I need to take a breath. I feel like I want to keep on going and dive deeper, but I know I'm just like everything we're doing is very high level. And so I
Yeah.
feel like I want to get more into detail, but time doesn't always permit.
But the next show will. I mean, I believe everyone, I really do believe that at this particular point, what we're trying to do is so has God's stamp of approval on it because we don't have to slow it down, Noel. We can keep going. Because if you really talk to folks about, you know, the things that really bother them in life and what keeps them from sleeping and what really is a strain and a struggle, these are the topics.
Yes. Because I know yeah, I've been that way, and I know you have.
Yeah, and if you sit and talk to your family members and other people, they're constantly trying to make sure they have this under control. So we'll go as long as we need to until it's time to stop, because we really we're not boxed into a time frame, because this is important to me and I know it's important to you. You've been such a godsend and I appreciate you. Thank you so much. And we'll just continue the series. You know, who knows? We'll stop when the Lord says stop. And if we have any questions, would you place your email address back up there one more time?
Yes, let me pull it back up.
If you have any questions, I want you to send those questions directly to her, because if you send them to me, I'm going to forward them to her. I'm always going to be involved probably when I finish my education, she and I will probably still be the dynamic duo, because I love working along with her. Just great insight. And she has a passion. You have a passion for making sure that people are managing their finances well and that people are protected. You have great stories. I even have great stories. And we can actually do this together. I'm excited. I'm excited. Okay. Well, that power of transformation train, Noel, we'll have to turn it around. It's been chugging along and we've been enjoying it, but now we're going to have to turn the power transformation train back around and bring it to the station and pump the brakes a little bit. And I say this every show, at the end of every show, you have to trust the process in order for the power of transformation to do its perfect work in your life. This show is based on an excerpt from Romans 12 and 2. Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. And that's what we're talking about, renewing your mind, renewing your process, and have a better financial life, have a better financial plan today and for tomorrow. That's what we say. And Noel will be back next week. Everybody will be back next week. Now, our replay will be on Saturday at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on ALH Broadcasting. However, there are some folks who will tune in right after the show and tonight's show, and it will be available just moments after we complete and end the show tonight, right?
Absolutely.
So, Noel, do you have any last words before we pump the brakes?
I think you have covered it all. Stay tuned to more series because it's only going to get better.
It's only going to get better. All right, tell your friends. We love you. We appreciate y'all. Take care. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.